We're watching now some of the former presidents enter, including President-elect Donald Trump. There's members of the Carter family as well, and President-elect and the former First Lady Melania Trump have entered, and this is probably the beginning of some of the presidents. You see Al Gore shaking his hand. Wow. And Mike Pence. That is probably the first time the two men have shaken hands since January 6th.
Well, as I think Leslie said, I don't think they've been in the same room together.
I mean, Robert, you've done so much reporting about that relationship, not to diverge from the story of the day,
But they did just shake hands. And for President-elect Trump and for former Vice President Pence, a moment where they could come together as two people who served this country. There's former President Barack Obama. They did not have a long exchange, clearly, Trump and Pence. But there was a thawing there in that exchange and that handshake. Who knows where it leads or what it means for them to decide and for us to cover in the weeks ahead. But there was a handshake, and well, we all remember what happened in January of 2021. But this is January of 2025.
And Bob, interesting to see Al Gore, former vice president, right next to Mike Pence, two vice presidents who found some common ground despite party difference, having both presided over the certification of elections they lost. Mike Pence recently being quoted as talking about a conversation from Al Gore where Al Gore said, "I really respect you," and Pence saying, "I drew on your example in 20."
And this an extraordinary moment as the president-elect sitting next to Barack Obama.
And you think about in 2016 during the transition, these two men, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, two presidents, had a bit of a chilly exchange. Everyone was bewildered in the Democratic Party by Trump's election. There's former President George W. Bush,
who did not shake Trump's hand. And the First Lady, former First Lady Laura Bush.
But this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way America operates. One president's elected and then another, and they go on and move forward.
I remember Melania Trump went to the Rosalind Carter's funeral. She represented the Trumps there, and as was said, while Jimmy Carter politically didn't care for Donald Trump, they did have a little bit of a personal relationship, talking about issues of the world from time to time, and once President Trump visited with Carter in New York.
And look how appropriately former President George W. Bush stands to welcome the former First Lady Hillary Clinton and President Clinton.
But we have not seen President Bush interact with President Trump.
We have
President
not.
Clinton.
And we can see other members of the presidential family. I see Chelsea Clinton sitting next to some of the Biden family back there. Some of those faces you may not recognize are Secret Service agents that are sitting very close, because this is a national security event.
The one behind President-elect Trump was famously behind President-elect Trump during the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania.
I do want to mention Margaret, too. We're looking at our former presidents of the United States, but there are world dignitaries here as well. Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward sitting next to Justin Trudeau. So there are world the dignitaries here to pay their tribute as well.
That's right. The recently resigned Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, is there. Right behind him, I saw earlier the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Gordon Brown, as well. There are ambassadors representing their countries encircling that entire area. I think I saw the Korean ambassador, the Monegasque ambassador. So it is really paying tribute to the United States, to the passing of a commander-in-chief. Countries that may not have been in the forefront of a diplomatic breakthrough. I haven't yet seen Middle East ambassadors there. I've seen mainly European and Asian, but you know, his legacy was pretty significant. We talked a bit about the Middle East, but also in Asia. He built upon what Richard Nixon had done with that breakthrough with China and helped to normalize diplomatic relations with the People's Republic after 30-odd years of refusal.
And perhaps to note, too, he did press hard on the issue of Palestinian statehood.
He did indeed. He did. And it was, I was rereading this book, Peace Process, that his Mideast advisor wrote, and the recounting of being in the room and pressing Menachem Begin to make some really hard calls here. Things that he said, I'll go public and say the Israelis wouldn't agree to this. And if you don't agree, we'll end here. We've heard so many times the story about him calling on the sort of sole morality and responsibility to the future generations, presenting those photos of the grandchildren. But there were some hard moments, too. There were some very hard diplomatic moments.
Carter was often criticized for micromanaging. They said even if you wanted to play on the White House tennis court, you had to go through Carter. He approved everybody who went there. But when you go to the Camp David Accords and those meetings up there at Camp David, that was micromanaging when it really worked, because it wouldn't have happened had he not been his micromanaging.
It was interesting to hear Norah talk about the precision he had on timing, because it was the constructive ambiguity, that was the phrase they used, that made the diplomacy possible, not actually getting into hammering out.
You can't help but witness this incredible collection of vice presidents, presidents, wannabe presidents in this first tour, and the personal relations.
This is a snapshot of the complexity of American politics, and especially the American presidency. You see President Barack Obama huddling right there with President-elect Trump. I've spoken to President-elect Trump many times over the years about President Obama. And let's remember, it was Trump who questioned Obama's love of country and credentials with the birther crusade years ago. But also Trump has told me over the years he respected politically how President Obama was able to win the presidency as a movement candidate, an outsider candidate in 2008. And some Trump advisors have said that model set forward by David Plouffe and Barack Obama inspired to a point the Trump campaign of 2016 Vice President Kamala Harris, President Bill Clinton.
I know Leslie Stahl is with us. Leslie?
Norah, I'm watching the ceremony here. Someone before said that President Carter had written down, expressed what he wanted in these ceremonies. I'm a little amused because when he was president, he didn't want to have these ceremonies. He, what we call, depomped the office. He didn't want Hail to the Chief played by the trumpeters every time he walked in the room. He got rid of that, and he realized that that was a mistake. The public wanted to see the trappings of the presidency, and so he had to put that back in to the regular course of his day when he was president, and he's come around to realize it, obviously, in the way this is a traditional process and ceremony, so that we can see the transition that takes place in our country from president to president to president, and the importance of bringing all these people together. I was struck by the fact, I think Douglas said, that that President Carter wanted the Trumps to be there. He wanted all the past presidents to come together and honor him, celebrate. He did so many things, as I said, to depomp the presidency. It was kind of amusing at the time. He used to carry his own suitcases onto Air Force One, and people kept saying to him, "Don't do that. Presidents don't do that." But that was his spirit.
It was his spirit. They will play Hail to the Chief again today, and there we see President of the United States, Joe Biden, and the First Lady, Jill Biden, the last to enter in these final moments before the service is about to begin. Want to speak with Robert Costa and Douglas Brinkley.
And what you see here in this scene is everybody, in a sense, showing up. And that was important to President Carter. I ran into President Carter and Mrs. Carter in January of 2017 at the U.S. Capitol. They showed up for President Trump's inauguration that day, and they had a quiet presence, observed it, paid their respects to the moment then. And Carter would often go to the Oval Office to meet with former presidents at certain gatherings. And so you see here, not everyone there loves each other or even likes each other, but they respect President Carter and they respect the country.
Douglas.
And we remember when Jimmy Carter became president in 1977, we had been a divided country. The Vietnam War had cut us in half, doves versus hawks, young people versus old people, era of civil rights, Vietnam. And Gerald Ford had called his memoir A Time to Heal, his presidential memoir, Jimmy Carter's Keeping Faith. What Carter and Ford wanted to do is get faith back in America's bipartisan tradition, the whole better angels of our nature idea of Lincoln. And lo and behold, what we're witnessing right now is really extraordinary, seeing Donald Trump meet with Mike Pence for the first time, seeing Barack Obama talking, with Donald Trump. Bill Clinton has been in George Washington Hospital, sick with fever just a week ago, and has worked to get healthy enough to come to make sure that he's there. So it really is, in a way, a moment, Bob, as you were saying, of the past, and that we need to continue. It's a tradition that we pull together when one of our commanders-in-chief passes.